Okay, on number 11 through 13, we're using these 2 points, and we're going to go through and do these steps. This kind of walks us through exactly what order we go in. So we want to write the equation of a line. So we first have to know the slope. So again, we can use the slope formula. Okay, we can do what we did here and do the change by just drawing the arrows, or we can set up the table. I know most of my students set up the table, so that's how I'm going to do it. I know Ms. Hale's students, some of you do this, and some of you draw your arrows. Okay, so when I put them in the table, -3, 7 goes in on top or on bottom, it doesn't really matter, but make sure you don't put -3 and 7 on the same side, because one's an X and one's a Y, and then 0, 4. So when I find my slope, when I go from a -3 to a 0, I'm adding 3. And when I go from a 7 to a 4, I'm subtracting 3. Again, if you're not sure, take the bottom number and subtract the top number. Okay, so when I go from a 0, 0 minus -3, I add 3, and I got +3. And 4 minus 7 gives me -3, so that means I subtract 3. If you're doing it this way, when you go from a 4 to a 7, you add 3. And when you go from a 0 to a -3, you subtract 3. Either way, it's going to come out to be the same. So we do our change in y over the change in x, which is -3 over 3. If you did it this way, it's +3 over -3. But either way, we do not leave it like this. If you're not sure what that equals, plug it in your calculator. Okay, so that equals -1. Do not leave this as a fraction. You're just creating more work for yourself when you come over here to find b. If this can reduce, reduce it. Now, to find the slope-intercept form, remember that's y equals mx plus b. So we know m is -1. We have an x and a y. We actually have 2 to choose from. Okay. Now, some of you may look at this and say, well, this right here is my y-intercept, so I know what b is automatically. I don't have to go through this process, and that is true. Okay, this is your y-intercept. The b is 4. But just for the case that it may not be that way on your test, I'm going to go ahead and use this point just to show you I'm still going to get the same y-intercept, but I'm going to show you that process just in case the one on your test doesn't give you the y-intercept. So the y value is 7, that's going to go here. The x value is -3, and we don't know b, even though we do. So 7 equals, we multiply these together, it gives me +3 plus b, and then we have to subtract 3 from both sides. So these cancel, so b gives me 4. See, I knew it was 4. Okay, so if they gave you the y-intercept up here, it is perfectly acceptable to say my y-intercept is 4, which my slope is 1, and we can write the equation y equals -1x plus 4. But if they don't give you the y-intercept, you're going to have to go through this process. Okay, now to get it in standard form, remember we want x and y to be on the same side, so we need to move this -x over to the other side. So I'm going to rewrite this up here just so we can go through the steps. So we want to move this over. That is the only term that I'm moving, so it's going to become positive when we move it over. So I'm just going to write +x because 1x is the same thing as x. This stays the same, this y value, and that 4 stays the same. Now, if my leading coefficient for my x value is negative, I would have to go through and change all the signs by multiplying by -1, or my class just changes the signs. This one is not, so this is my answer. That's my answer in standard form. If we ended up with a fraction for the slope, we would have to go through and multiply by the denominator to get rid of that fraction. So go back and look at some problems that were like that if you're still unsure how to get rid of the fraction when you're trying to put it in standard form.